So from one part of New Zealand to another, we go from Christchurch on the South Island to the capital city on the north. Dan Moffat's brother lives in Wellington, and Dan joins us now from his home in Northern Ireland. Good afternoon, Dan. So what has your brother said about the situation in New Zealand?
Yes, good afternoon, Dan. Well, the situation in New Zealand has been one defined as swift by many. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern imposed a country-wide lockdown 8 days ago at a stage when there had been no deaths and only a few hundred reported cases of COVID-19 in New Zealand. Now, it starts as an initial 4-week lockdown, but that could be increased depending on how the situation there progresses. At the moment, the country has 708 reported cases and just one death, but like elsewhere globally, that is likely to increase over the coming weeks. My brother David has been living in the capital city, Wellington, for 5 years now. He's currently a manager of a restaurant in the city and is also a personal trainer. Now, because of the lockdown, both those jobs have been put on pause for the moment. I spoke with him earlier this week to see how it has affected him and also what he thinks of the government's response to the pandemic.
It has massively affected staff, revenue, sales. Obviously, we had to close just on Monday, just gone there. And that's a hard sort of pill to swallow, really, but I think in the long term it's for the best. You could feel there was a vibe around, definitely Wellington as a city, that people were going, and not just panic buying, but were going to New World and the big supermarkets and trying to get ahead of the game and try and stock up and prepare for supplies, knowing that a lockdown was imminent. And the Prime Minister, Jacinda, has definitely installed a lot of confidence in employees and employers that there is a government funding, that they will be spreading throughout New Zealand to ensure that employers can pay their employees during this very difficult time. And I personally think that is amazing as a nation to come together to try and ensure everybody can try and get by during this time, because I know the rest of the world aren't so forgiving.
And Dan, how else has your family been affected by the virus?
Well, my other brother, Tom, who lives just outside Cardiff, has suffered from many of the symptoms of coronavirus over the last couple of weeks. He's classed as a key worker as his job sees him caring for adults with disabilities, but he's been unable to return to work because of his symptoms. My brother Tom is also one of the many people across the UK who has not been able to be tested for the virus and has used the 111 hotline for advice over the past few weeks.
When I contacted 111 on the phone, they went through a comprehensive question checklist with me to see if I had symptoms that lined up with the coronavirus. The man on the phone told me that it seems like I did have the symptoms, although that I would be unable to get tested at the moment. This was currently 3 weeks ago. I was then told to go into isolation for a week or longer if the symptoms still stayed, which for me they did. And during this time I found it was very difficult for myself. GPs being closed and pharmacies being closed in my local area means that if you were living on your own in a one-person house, that you wouldn't be able to support yourself really to the best extent. You are always relying on other people's help from outside.
Tom has spoken to his work about not being able to return at the moment and continues to monitor his own health each day. Here at home in Northern Ireland, my mum is currently off work for the next 12 weeks as she is classed as having COPD. Meanwhile, my dad continues to deliver groceries for Asda on a daily basis. Back to you, Dan and Nohan.